In 1960, when I was a teenager, Miami was a very different place from the Miami of today. When you walked in a gymnasium or walked in a stadium, to just hear the verbal abuse, "What are you doing there, in? Why are you here? You know, get out of here. We don't need any of you." And I have to tell you, that was very, very difficult. I mean, it hurt.
I do recall in the neighborhood grocery store that had two water fountains. One water fountain said for whites only, and the other one said for coloreds only. And when I asked my mom, she said, make sure you only drink from the one that said for colored only. Well, I was a little insulted by that, so I decided not to drink from either. When I came to Notre Dame, I did not feel any anxiety or any different from any of the other students there. I quickly found out that I was just as smart as they were, just as active, could be just as friendly.
My first day at Curley, my dad escorted us, and there were TV and there were some newspaper folks as well taking pictures. I think I was a typically confused freshman, you know. And I mean, you got into a kid thing, what kids who are freshmen talk about, rather than, oh, you know, you're the black guy. I mean, there was none of that.
Our American history teacher, Mr. Monaco, was telling us about how Miami used to be a segregated city, and that 50 years ago, in September 1960, our school, Archbishop Curley, Notre Dame, was the first high school in all of Florida to integrate. We just couldn't believe that Florida used to be racially segregated, that blacks and whites didn't eat in the same restaurants, ride the same buses. Blacks couldn't even go to the same school as whites.
And we didn't know the significance of it at that time. That's a strange
We were going to be history detectives and find out how our school fit into the civil rights movement and prepare for a special celebration scheduled for Black History Month, where the pioneers of that era would return to their school. First, we tracked down and interviewed as many of the students from the early 60s as we could find. We had tons of questions like, what was it like being a teenager during integration? How was making new friends? How did our school prepare them for their adult lives? Then we went to the public library downtown to do research. We discovered stories about how blacks were starting to do marches and do sit-ins, and how Martin Luther King, who wasn't very famous yet, was fighting discrimination.
A massive all-out drive to double the number of Negro voters.
One article reported that in Miami, some boys were fined $25 for going into the zoo on Saturday. Blacks were only allowed on Thursdays, Negro Day. That was a lot of money back then. We also found an article in the 1960 Miami Herald reporting that Negroes entered what was then Archbishop Curley School for Boys, and that nobody was making a fuss. You see, it was the idea of the Archbishop to quietly admit these 3 boys and 2 girls into the sister school, Notre Dame Academy. Catholic high schools could integrate without all the politics, and our school was the first. We were finally beginning to understand how our little school was an exciting part of civil rights history. And it was time to bring that history to life for the entire student body.
We come from different circumstances, but color doesn't matter. It is what is in your heart.
We invited 24 students from that time back to their school for Living History Day. They visited every classroom and talked about their first days in school and how they were accepted by other students and all the teachers.
My parents left Alabama after the bombing of our home.
And they answered every question today's students had about integration. I love Curley. Today it is very multi-ethnic and multicultural. We have blacks, Haitians, Spanish speakers, Asians, and whites. We're from different countries and are different colors. And we never think twice about race. We all sit together at lunch, study together, we are all friends. Our visitors made lifetime friends too. But then they were making history crossing the color line. If our visitors hadn't been willing to take a chance 50 years ago to be the first to integrate, life for me and all my classmates would be very different today.
Today was intended to be a day of truth.
Maybe the celebration should have been held back then in 1960, but the times back then would not have allowed it, and history had to unfold as it did so we could arrive here today.